This is You, Me, and Bitcoin. We are back again. We are ready to do another episode. Today's topic is Bitcoin ethics, and we also have a little bit of a personal story that we want to tell you. Visit our website at youmeandbtc.com. We would love some comments, some tips, pretty much anything, any form of support. We'd love that. Just Tim Baker today. Tim Baker and myself, Daniel Brown. Here we go. Our topic at the moment is Bitcoin ethics. We want to discuss what's right, what's good about Bitcoin, and if there's anything that might be wrong, if there's anything with Bitcoin that we don't like or that we think is kind of unethical. We will mention our political views maybe a little bit. I know that the Bitcoin community is heavily libertarian, at least in some ways. And I mean, I'll let you explain this, Tim, but I feel like you're mostly libertarian, or in some ways. I wouldn't say mostly, maybe. Do you want to explain maybe what your political views are and how that applies to Bitcoin?
Well, I'm ashamed that you don't think I'm fully libertarian, Daniel. I guess that's my fault for not acting better, but...
Would you consider yourself a libertarian?
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, because I know sometimes you don't like that word, and you don't like to be associated with certain ideas. And I know a lot of times you say voluntarist, or what is that?
Voluntarist.
Okay, so go ahead. Just describe what you mostly believe, especially about Bitcoin.
Like, I guess just in general, being what you'd call voluntarist, which, I mean, it's easier just for you to look it up on Wikipedia, especially if you're taking the time to listen to us. Voluntarist is basically just a nicer, more socially acceptable way of saying an anarcho-capitalist.
So basically, yeah, in some sense, anarchy. Now, I know you don't like that term either, but basically, if people agree, if people volunteer, I guess, if people agree to something, then that's what governs people, is what they volunteer or agree to. Or, I mean, I'm sure contracts would be pretty big in that sort of society, right?
Yeah, real, like, enforceable contracts, not the kind that we have most of the time in this country.
How does voluntarism and anarcho-capitalism, why is Bitcoin good when it comes to those ideas?
Okay, it's because with Bitcoins, and when you take a third party out of there, when it's just your money being sent from you directly to them, something like Bitcoin or cash, you don't have to trust that person, which solves the problem of people always referring to anarchists or people who want a voluntary society of being just, they kind of have to not believe that people are ever going to be evil or people are ever going to steal, but they have to just assume that everyone's good, everyone is going to treat each other nicely. But with Bitcoin, because it goes from not needing to trust anyone, whether that's the person you're sending money to or the middleman between you, it solves that problem very well of having to trust people. But also, I think, in a voluntary society where courts would have to compete against each other, you'd go to one court, hopefully, because that judge is known for giving a good verdict. But I think Bitcoin, with how decentralized it is and how anyone can use it, really allows for more contracts to come up where normally they aren't. I don't particularly like doing contracts. Most of the time, I can't say that I do a ton of business, but anytime I'm doing something, it's with someone I pretty much know, or I'm at some position where if the person then doesn't take away or doesn't pay me my money, I can kind of empower over them, which, like with a lot of lawn care, Daniel, you can just, the person's going to pay you, because if not, you're just going to come back and ruin their lawn. I mean, I wouldn't do that, but that's what they would expect most people.
You would do that, just admit it.
Now, well, Mike has always talked about wanting to we have a customer drop us or just not pay us enough or on time. We should just go bleach the yards and just everything like that. But we haven't done that yet.
So you're saying that the reason Bitcoin, I don't know, I guess it seems to me like Bitcoin and voluntaryism could almost be synonyms, because that's what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is, you volunteer to use Bitcoin and nobody else can affect your decision. If you want to use it, if you want to follow the rules, you can do that, and it works pretty well. Basically, when you send a transaction, you volunteer to send your money to this place, and if that's what you choose to do, nobody else can affect that really in any way. Yeah, if you volunteer, that's what happens. And so, I mean, they're not really synonyms, but it seems like they have a lot in common. In some ways, the way I've thought of it, it seems like Bitcoin is a democracy in the original sense, where the people really do have the power, and every person has the same amount of power, almost like a direct democracy, maybe, where literally everyone has the exact same amount of power, and no more, no less. I mean, there are miners out there. There's people with more money who can afford better miners, and that might affect certain parts of the network.
Evil rich people.
Yeah, someone could, there is the 51% attack. Maybe someone could get enough power, but not really. I mean, that's a whole topic in itself. But basically, unless someone gets 51%, which is pretty unlikely, then everyone can do the exact same thing, and nobody can do more, nobody can do less. They can send any money that they have, they can send it anywhere. It's the people who are in charge, and everyone has the same amount of power, almost like a direct democracy. But it's not like the original Greek idea where only the white males who own property,
or just Grecian man. I don't know how white.
I don't.
I guess they normally are, but no racism, Daniel.
Yeah, there's none of that. And I think that's pretty awesome. Because the problem with our current democracy, at the moment, I would almost consider myself an opponent of democracy because of the way in America it's kind of been ruined. Because the way we do it in America, we sort of give people a certain amount of power, and we sort of give everyone the same amount of power in that everyone has one vote. But then we use those votes to give other people a lot more power, and people can use their money, and they can use the power that they already have been given by the people to get more power. It's really messed up. It's a republic, I guess, technically, as opposed to a democracy. It's really, the people don't all have equal power. There are definitely people with more power, especially if they have more money. Then they can get more power. They can use that power to get more power, and it turns into a wreck, which is now called America. That's why, when you're young in America, you're raised to believe that democracy is it's perfect. It's this whole new idea that's going to change everything, and everyone's going to be equal and perfect, and there's still a little bit of that in me, but I've been realizing lately that it's kind of a joke. But Bitcoin sort of returns the good parts of democracy. Bitcoin brings back the true equality. It's just a fact. You can't do anything. Nobody can do something on the Bitcoin network that someone else can't do. It just can't be done, unless, except for maybe a 51% attack could change things. But ultimately, everyone has the same amount of power, and I like that.
Although I would argue with you saying that it's a democracy, because you keep on talking about giving the power to the people, and the power going back to the people who vote for their rulers. But Bitcoin doesn't do that. Bitcoin is me sending money to a guy over there. I don't have, unless for some weird reason you really are going to listen to the Bitcoin, I don't know, foundation, something, I don't know, they go to the different countries to try to get Bitcoin, except I think I might be confusing two different things, but the people who, like the Bitcoin committee that are going to be giving out edicts about things, it's not edicts, but they seem to want to kind of make it more palatable, I guess, to society. More compliance in society, so it looks better and you're following all these laws. Which that's why I like Bitcoin. It's not democracy where there are no people. There is no section off thing of people, just everyone is a person. And that's what libertarians, anarcho-capitalists, voluntarists, they all want everyone treated as a individual person. Just because a guy puts on a suit and goes to work at Congress doesn't mean he's any better than you or me. It's like they voluntarists and all these people who believe in liberty, they want everyone treated the same, whether they're a janitor someplace or the president of the United States. And that's what other people, you have to respect this man because he's the president and he murders people, and you have to respect that cop because he's got a costume on and he'll shoot you if you don't respect him. But they're all good, nice, anyway. And you thank this soldier because he fought for you. I didn't want him to go do that. Treat everyone the same. Don't give cops extra rights against... I mean, there wouldn't be cops. It'd be a security thing, but treat everyone the same. This is getting way on about the whole people thing, but I mean, Bitcoin is like functional anarchy. The internet is a great example of kind of just anarchy, basically. Governments tell people not to do stuff on there, and
yeah, I agree, and that's partly where the ethics comes in, because some people think that it is wrong not to be compliant. Some people think that it's wrong not to respect the government, not to obey the government, not to do what the government wants, and Bitcoin kind of goes in the face of that, because Bitcoin lets you do anything you want, and doesn't care about the government. With Bitcoin, it's really only it's really only a two-party thing. It's the sender of the money and the receiver of the money, but actually it's really only a one-party thing, because whether the receiver wants it or not, you can send money to that address. So basically, Bitcoin doesn't care what anyone else says. Bitcoin doesn't care what the government says. And some people think that that's wrong. Some people think that if the government doesn't want it, then you shouldn't do it. And that's where you would disagree a lot. I would disagree mostly. Why should we let the government and the cops tell us what to do? Let me ask you this. Is there any part of Bitcoin that you think is wrong, that you think is bad when it comes to ethics?
Bitcoin doesn't have ethics. That's like saying, is the dollar bad? Is money bad in general? It can definitely be used for bad things. Like, I don't know if I'm thinking that I heard this, or maybe I just heard another story and thought about it, was the kind of underage porn, like those kind of websites that have to go on, like dark web stuff. The ability to send money. I don't even know if those things take money for you to watch stuff, or if it's, I don't know. But would be the ability to send money to that, or to pay for something a little bit more discreetly, or a lot more discreetly. That's not Bitcoin, that's not the dollar, that's people. So I can't see anything wrong with Bitcoin. I shouldn't say I can't say anything wrong, but that's not a fault of Bitcoin, what I just said. That's just a fault of people. So I can't say that Bitcoin isn't dangerous, people are dangerous, I guess is what I'm saying.
I definitely agree. It's almost like the old idea that guns don't kill people, because they don't. It's the people who use the guns. and I think that definitely applies to Bitcoin. You can do a lot of things with Bitcoin that are wrong, that are unethical, but that doesn't make Bitcoin bad. And in fact, I really don't think there is anything that you can say is bad about Bitcoin because Bitcoin doesn't do anything. Bitcoin is just there, and people use Bitcoin. People use, for both the currency and for the network. It's not, they don't, neither one does anything. It's the people who use the currency and the people who use the network. The Silk Road or any black market, that itself is a whole discussion over whether that's ethical or unethical. But even if it was unethical, that doesn't, just because they use Bitcoin doesn't make Bitcoin the bad guy. It's the people who are doing those things.
Hey, this is John Stuart. You may have heard me in the few contributions I've made to the You, Me, and Bitcoin podcast. If you've ever wondered where the intro music comes from for the podcast, it was actually written and recorded by myself. Recently, I put together and recorded an album of all original songs, and I'm now releasing it online. We're going to play a track for you from that album coming up in the podcast, so if you want to hear it, stick around. If you're interested to check out more of the album, you can head over to my Bandcamp page, which is jjstuart, that's stuart.bandcamp.com. You can stream the full album there, and it's also available as a pay-what-you-want download. So you can download it for free, or you can opt to use Bandcamp's built-in PayPal feature. There's also a Bitcoin address located on the sidebar if you're interested in donating Bitcoin. Thanks for your time. I'm extremely grateful to anybody who's willing to check out the album and listen to some of my music. If you want to get in touch or keep up to date on what I'm going to be doing in the future, there's a fan email address on Bandcamp that you should be able to find. There's also a Facebook page called The Auricular Investigations of John Stewart, so you could head over and like that. Thanks again.
The voluntarist thing it's not related to the word volunteer, at least the way, which I always thought it was. That's what I associated it with. It's just voluntary, like if something's voluntary or if it's required. It's not the idea of volunteering, like there isn't anything in there about you should help people more.
You mean like optional?
Yeah. I'm an optionalist.
Well, yeah, that's what people say about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is an opt-in service, which means if you opt to use it, then you can, which that's what optional is. That's optional. So, yeah.
I was just going to say way back at the beginning, you said about me not liking the word libertarian or being associated with it, which I was still kind of like that. I think probably even yesterday. I mean, I didn't give it a ton of thought. People weren't just screaming out libertarian in the street, and I wasn't, no, don't associate. But I listened to a podcast by that Stefan Molyneux guy, and he was interviewing Adam Kokesh, which is one of Adam Kokesh's videos kind of brought me into this whole circle, and then I kept on getting more and more into it. They were talking about how like people get chased off of a word like libertarian. I mean, it sounds great. Any anarcho-capitalist problem with being labeled libertarian, because then you get associated with the libertarian political party. So, which their platform is limited government, like it's minarchism. Just the smallest amount of government that we need, we're going to put it all in the most powerful positions like the police and the whole justice system and the military, which that government will never get any bigger, but that's another conversation. It's that fear of being associated with the Libertarian Party, which isn't terrible. I mean, it's better than what's above it, the two main parties that are normally involved. But libertarian, like I was saying before, is a good term. It's just believing in liberty.
The thing about Bitcoin, with all, with whether it's libertarian or voluntaryism or anything like that, Bitcoin is great. Bitcoin really does fulfill some of these dreams. Bitcoin really does make people equal. Bitcoin really does give everyone the same amount of power. Bitcoin allows you to opt in. Bitcoin allows you to volunteer instead of be forced to do something. It allows you, it promotes liberty for the libertarians or anything like that. It's good in all those ways. But the thing is, for the moment, that freedom, all those benefits only apply in one area, and that's in the currency. That's when it comes to your money. Now, that's a great thing, but it's still only one area. It doesn't, not yet anyway, it doesn't change the fundamental sources of power or anything like that. Hopefully it'll grow. Hopefully it'll expand to areas other than currency. It does give us those great benefits, but only in that one area. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's not limited to that. We still have room to grow and expand those benefits. It's just we're not there yet.
Bitcoin is kind of apolitical, which you don't, like an anarcho-capitalist voluntarist, like it's not political, it's just how you kind of live your life, or how you want just voluntary things. There wouldn't be politics. That's what I like about Bitcoin so much.
What do you mean there wouldn't be politics, or how is it apolitical?
I was just thinking about the political views thing. It doesn't, like you were saying before, it doesn't care what you are. You can be socialist, but maybe, I don't know, maybe you're a closet capitalist pig. I don't know.
No, that's true. And one thing that's interesting there is that, if people wanted to, which is also interesting, because if, this is also, sort of voluntarist, but if people wanted to, people could use Bitcoin exactly like they use the dollar, and it could change absolutely nothing. If people wanted to, they could pay their sales tax, they could put their money in banks, people could fractionally reserve Bitcoins and issue pieces of paper that are worth a certain amount, and those pieces of paper could be worth more Bitcoins than the bank actually has. People could make all of the same mistakes with Bitcoin that they have done with the dollar and other fiat currencies. People could turn their money over to other people and make the exact same mistakes. But they could only do that if they wanted to, if they volunteered to do that, if they opted to do that. That's the only way that those things could happen. So it's interesting that Bitcoin does let you be an idiot if you want, but it's only if you want, and it's still voluntarist. So, that's a hard word to say, just so you know.
Yeah, I know it is, and it doesn't work too well typing it in either sometimes.
I guess that's why it would be apolitical, is because it really doesn't. Yeah, I mean, it's if people want to use it as in a Republican sort of way, then they can do that. If people want to use it in a democratic sort of way, they can do that. If people want to use it in a socialist sort of way, they could do that too.
That's what I was saying about like the anarcho-capitalist or voluntarist, is that like Bitcoin, it's apolitical. In a voluntarist system, people can go off and form it's not a system, that's even the wrong way to talk about it. If we lived in a voluntarist geographical area, I can't even say country, there could be socialist collectives that wanted to go off and they wouldn't use money. They would just live together in happiness. There could be, if a bunch of people wanted to go off and be forced to work for some guy, that'd be fine. But voluntarism just says, all right, do whatever you want because we don't care. It's as long as it's voluntary, it's fine. That's part of why I don't necessarily like being called an anarchist, because then you get associated with that where they got a hood on and they're throwing stuff at some rich guy's building. Yeah, they might be the rich might. I mean, they do have more power, like we were talking before. But an anarchist, I'm not against any kind of government. I'm fine with it as long as it's voluntary, which is why I kind of make that distinction.
You would be okay with our current system, except for the things that are non-voluntary. And what all would you say is non-voluntary right now? Like taxes and things like that, right?
They say they're voluntary.
Well, yeah, but if you don't pay them, then they're going to put you in prison, right?
Someone from the IRS supposedly said that they were optional. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, that's definitely not possible.
Yeah, taxes. I mean, talking about completely voluntary. It's weird with the police because, I mean, security companies are needed. It's just, I've never understood this whenever I try to talk to somebody about it. Everybody assumes that, like, the more important thing is you shouldn't have monopoly, right? Like, okay, someone might be fine on Cheetos having monopoly on Cheetos, but if then there's companies competing for whether you want a competitive system or one that's a monopoly, wouldn't it make more sense to want a competitive one for your security, one of the most important things, versus just letting a monopoly go there, which then just breeds corruption and kind of just... I'm sure that there are police officers that do their jobs well, but they don't... The police force there doesn't really have an incentive to too much because there's not going to be any competition. Like the U.S. Postal Service. That's why all my packages recently have come 5 days later than they were supposed to. Or maybe that's just me whining. I don't know.
I'm glad you brought up monopolies, because that's something I've been thinking about a lot recently. I believe that competition is good. Of course I do, for plenty of reasons. You know, because competition drives quality up and drives prices down, which is good for me. But what I kind of wonder is, you know, I also believe in freedom. I also have this, you know, a libertarian mindset, a voluntarist kind of ideas, and a little bit of anarchy in there maybe. I also believe that if someone is able to gain a monopoly, maybe that's okay. I mean, if they did it in the midst of competition, if they were able to gain a monopoly, is that a bad thing? Should we try to avoid that sort of thing? I don't know. If they do it out of freedom, if they gain that monopoly legitimately, you know, without killing anyone and stuff like that, is that a bad thing, or is it okay for people to have a monopoly sometimes?
Like what you were saying, if it does come about voluntarily, I don't have a problem with it, because I don't see how in a completely voluntary society with no government, really a monopoly happens. It doesn't make sense that it would happen without the coercive nature of the government favoring one side over the other because that one side lobbies more or just goes after that politician and offers him more money. In a completely free society, I don't really see how a monopoly would arise, because one company starts putting up their prices again, one more thing can just start up there, and all they have to do is, you can take everyone that got put out of business by the other guy, and they just start one of them, and it can just start up, and they'll take away their stuff for a little bit. Then that company, the big company that's trying to become a monopoly, they'll have to put their prices up for a little bit to get done with that one. And then another one pops up, their prices have to go up. It's not economically feasible, at least it doesn't seem to be. Like, I don't know, could you give me an example of how you think it might?
I mean, again, I don't have any sort of evidence or experience in this type of area. But if I had to guess, I would imagine that the way it would arise is that, you know, one company we'll use the proverbial widgets. If someone's making widgets for you know, $20 a widget and selling them for 30, if you know, there might be a bunch of companies out there, you know, slightly different prices, but if one company is able to, you know, let's say they sell that and they make $1,000, if that $1,000 can keep them floating for a while, they might be able to take some losses, or you know, let's say they sell at cost. Let's say they make them for 20 and they sell them for 20, and they have $1,000 to sort of keep them running for another year or two. And that, because they're selling them at cost, that's about as cheap as they can do it. Or in some cases, they might even be able to take a loss. And basically, if someone has enough money, they could sell their products at a lower price, maybe even lower than it cost them, for long enough to drive the other companies out of business. Eventually, they'll be the only ones left, and they'll have a monopoly. Now, you're saying that if they did have a monopoly, they could jack their prices. They make them for 20, they could jack their prices up to 100. And you're saying it's so easy because someone could just come in and sell them for 90, or someone could come in and sell them for 80. And that's how you would undercut the monopoly. The problem is, once you have that monopoly, you have the exact same power, and probably a lot more power and a lot more money to do the exact same thing that you did originally, which is to drop your prices, drive other people out. Now, that might not actually be a bad thing, because if you have to drop your prices to drive out a new competitor, that's exactly what we want. But I think if you did it for long enough, you might be able to get your prices up there, maybe around 100, for a lot more than you should, and you might be able to hurt a lot of people in that way. And eventually people are going to stop trying to compete with you, because they know that as soon as they start up a new widget factory, you're going to undercut them, and they're going to be out, and then there's going to be a monopoly again. What do you think? Could that be avoided?
The most interesting explanation I ever heard of why it wouldn't happen was that when that big company goes to sell their widgets at cost or lower, why doesn't another person see that they're doing it? Because normally you can see when stuff like this is happening, for the normal person at least. Someone who is very in tune with the local economy, stuff like that, he decides, or all the other competitors of this bigger company decide to band together and do this themselves. They just buy all the widgets the person is selling at loss, and then they keep them, and then when they start putting their prices back up, then that company starts selling them. I mean, in a voluntary society, that's so much easier to just start up a business, because you don't have to pay the licensing stuff. You don't have to do all that. I don't know, I just think it would basically just start selling stuff again, because there wouldn't be actual property for like a design, and you bought it, so it's now yours, so you can sell it. Unless somehow the company makes it so that when you're buying it, you cannot resell, but it's almost unenforceable again. So,
yeah, I know what you mean, and that's actually a pretty good idea. If you could spot it, and if you saw when the price was lower than the cost, then you would want to buy them all up, and then you would hope they get a monopoly, and you would hope they jack their prices up, because then you would take all those widgets that you stored away at such a low price and start, if the cost to make them is 20 and they were selling them at 18 to kind of undercut the competition, you could buy them up at 18, wait until they jack their prices up to 100, and then start selling that whole stash of them for $50 or whatever, and make a lot of money. That's true. Now there's a lot of variables in there. It depends. You could have a perishable widget that doesn't last more than a week, and who knows? But that's a pretty good example. And you would also have to be able to spot. If someone's trying to undercut the competition, you would have to be able to spot that. But I think that's pretty easy. If the price is unusually low, then buy up the widgets. What do you think? Does that? I guess that would apply pretty well to Bitcoin, because with Bitcoin, you really do have that freedom that we've been talking about. And if, with Bitcoin, you might be able to pull off some sort of monopoly that no government can force you to get rid of. It might be possible for this exact kind of scenario to go down in Bitcoin without any oversight. But yeah, like you said, it's probably possible to eliminate that monopoly. Even if it does arise, you could deal with it.
Yeah. It is a little bit different with monopolies, especially on the internet. We were talking about how cheap it would be, or at least I was saying it was how cheap it would be to start up a business in a completely voluntary society. with stuff like Bitcoin, especially with how much it's used over the internet, I think it'd be very hard. I don't know what kind of monopoly you were saying, like if it was particularly like providing Bitcoin or if it was just a service using Bitcoin.
Yeah, I just mean in the Bitcoin arena, because there is no oversight, then that sort of thing might be able to happen. Any kind of monopoly.
But do you want to take a risk with monopoly, or do you want people who, well, at least they'll make stuff like the antitrust stuff, which again, I listened to something a while ago where you look into some of those laws, and with any kind of like safety stuff, the big companies normally want stuff like that because they can, if there's like a new health regulation or something like that, they want that because they have enough money to cover like bringing in new stuff or changing around things a little bit to comply with the law. But that's really going to hit the small businesses hard, which in a voluntary society you would not have laws like that. It's basically just don't hit people, it's just voluntary. You can hit people if you want, if they want, or not if you want, but it's just everything has to be voluntary. So there isn't a government that can just go, that meat isn't particularly packaged well. I think if we lived in a voluntary society, I think you'd have to be just not smarter, but just more attentive to those around you, because you're not, the government will help stuff. So I think people, and like they do on the internet, any business that wants to stay in business for a while and to make any kind of money in the Bitcoin, they have to be their customers. They can't just screw them over.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is how in a truly free society, you're taking a pretty big risk when you do something unethical. If you do try to create a monopoly, that's pretty risky because people aren't going to like that, and people have just about the same power that you do. And so you can try to start a monopoly if you want, but there's a little bit of risk there. Or you can try to do something else unethical if you want, but there's going to be some risk there, which is important. Something else you said earlier that I think is important is how you were talking about a voluntarist society in general, but you were saying how there would be no licensing fees, no sort of fees to start up a corporation or anything like that. And I mean, when you think of all the fees that the government charges and all the taxes in a million different areas, that can be pretty destructive in some ways. When it comes to Bitcoin, now again, Bitcoin only applies for the moment. It only applies when it comes to currency, but Bitcoin is extremely low cost, and that's huge. Bitcoin, I mean, it's not free. You do have to pay fees, and unfortunately, over time, I think those fees might go up just because the block reward is going to go down. But Bitcoin really is, Bitcoin is really cheap, and that's helpful. It's just that much more power, that much more control that the people can have instead of turning all their money and over to the government. They'll have to pay the miners, but even when it comes to mining, even that is voluntarist, and even the fees are voluntary, which is kind of interesting. But so because there's very low cost, that just gives the people that much more power, I guess, and that's helpful because then if there is a monopoly, and if you wanted to buy up all those widgets at $18 a pop, because there's so few fees, it's just going to be that much easier to do that. It's going to be that much easier to make a big purchase like that. It's going to be that much easier to resell them later at a lower cost because there's no fees. It's just that's more power, It is time to hear from John Stuart again. Remember to visit jjstewart.bandcamp.com if you like what you hear.
There is a ghost inside my head who comes back from the dead to show me everything I fear and make my thoughts unclear. I'm so afraid I try to hide my guilt and shame inside. I know that I have lost my way, despite what I may say. I have become estranged from the ones that I'm supposed to know, to keep and to love. For each pathetic tear I bled, a drop of blood was shed as my self-pity led to sin that fed the ghost within. I tried to wipe away the stains of a past that brings me pain with my own damned and bloody hands. This was not what I planned, and now I know why we all hold our breath. Everyone is just one step from their death. If I would drown my hate and fear, the ghost would disappear, and I'd be left with no one else to blame but myself. I've sunk beneath the waves of guilt. The boat that I built was never strong enough to sail. I know that I have failed, and now I see so clearly that we'd rather face a ghost than face our own demons.
Well, I guess this is our story about, because it's not just it was with Daniel, but how I kind of got into mining Bitcoin. This was a few months after I had originally heard about it. Well, we pre-ordered it a few months afterwards. I kind of brought Daniel in, or talked to him probably that same week that I first heard about it. But Daniel, being more technical, started looking into more of the mining stuff. I was like, okay, my computer's like 5 years old or 12 years old. Never gonna be able to do this. But Daniel decided to look up some, and he sent me the Butterfly Labs, one of their pre-order things, and he was looking at the jalapenos, which was you just plug it in your computer and it would heat your coffee while it mined. But that was their lowest thing. I don't remember exactly how much that cost. Do you remember, Daniel?
It was, I want to say $150. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was $150.
We kind of heard about that, then stuff happened, and it was around the price drop, like the big thing from like, it went up to, I don't even, maybe it wasn't that much, maybe it was like $10, I don't know.
I think it was when it went from about 266 to 100 or whatever it was. Yeah, I think it was a few weeks or a month after that. It was kind of the cool down period, and we were looking into some new things.
Yeah, so we kind of forgot about it. Then months in advance, it was Daniel kind of sent me a text and asked me if I had thought any more about the miners, something like that. And I think I talked to him for a while. And we decided to pre-order them, and we kind of went back and forth on what to get, if we should get like multiple jalapenos. We ended up getting it was like the mid-range, I think, for about $650, maybe.
It was the little single, which was, it was pretty mid-range. And it was your idea too. I'm pretty stingy with my money. Yeah, I normally would not want to take a risk like that. I don't know. I guess I just had the money. I'm like, what the heck? Let's go for it.
Okay, so yeah, we ordered the kind of the mid-range miner, and that was, but it was it was a pre-order, not an order. The original time we were supposed to be getting it was, I don't even remember what, but it kept getting pushed back and back, and this was from Butterfly Labs.
The reason that we wanted to buy this in the first place is because at the time, when you ran those ASICs through a mining calculator, if you ran the numbers, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's maybe $100 a day or more, because the difficulty hadn't spiked yet, and those ASICs really are powerful. We were looking to make a ton of money. Now we knew that the difficulty was going to go up. We knew that, and we were expecting that. And so what I would do in the calculator, I would multiply the difficulty by 10. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. We can still make money. So, all right. But just to be careful, I would multiply it by 100. And, oh, that's good. We're still making money. So that's good. Now, ultimately, the difficulty went up probably even more than 100 times, but I guess we'll get there. Go ahead, Tim.
So time was supposed to be delivered, just keeps getting pushed back and back, and every so often Daniel's like, yeah, that difficulty is going up higher and higher. But it was like, okay, we're still going to run it for a while, which actually, this was where I got another extra call from Daniel, or maybe an email, I don't know. Butterfly Labs had sent him an email asking him if he wanted his money back. We paid in US dollars, we didn't put Bitcoin into it. But if we wanted paid back the US dollars, or if we'd still want the miner shipped. So Daniel was talking to me about it, and I was like, even if it doesn't make that much money, I figure we might as well still have it, and it can just run. Neither of us are paying for our own electricity. Whoever has it, just let it run, and if it makes us money, it will, or if it doesn't. Partly because at this point, it had been so far back that we paid for the miner, I wasn't even missing the money. I wasn't too worried about it. But then go on from that, it kept on getting pushed back more and more and more, and I don't even remember, was it in October that we finally got it?
Yeah, I think it was the end of October, or maybe the beginning of November. We finally got it.
Yeah, so we got it. It's been up pretty much most of the time, except we've been down a little bit.
Yeah, Tim doesn't know all the details. I don't know if I ever told you the whole story.
No, I wouldn't understand the details.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I wanted to remove the end plates just to make it quieter, so the air had more kind of room to flow. I did that. I took off the end sort of grating kind of covering plate. But at one point when I was pulling out the screws and the rods and everything that was in there, it was on at the time, which was really stupid on my part. But I don't know. I really don't know what happened. There were some sparks, and it kind of jumped around a bit. I don't know. But I thought that I ruined it. I was upset for a while. I didn't know what happened. But I finally got it going again. The fan kind of comes and goes. The fan will kind of rev up, and then it'll die off. So the fan still runs, but not great. And so ultimately the problem is cooling. It overheats sometimes, and you can see in the mining program that it's BFG miner that I leave running. It shows you the temperature, and as soon as it gets above 85 degrees Celsius, it'll tell you how it's shutting everything off. The temperature drops a few degrees, and then it starts everything up again. And for a while, that was putting us at maybe 25 gigahash per second, even though we're supposed to get 30. We were in the 23 to 25 range. I don't exactly know why, but over the last few weeks and months, we've been getting 29 pretty stably. I don't know why. Maybe just because the temperature is lower for the winter or something. But yeah, we've been back up to 29. The fan still isn't running right, but we've been getting 29. So anything else?
We had more profit back when Bitcoin was way, way up, but now I think if we finally do get our first full Bitcoin, since we've already gotten half out of it, I think the price right now would basically be what we paid for it. So, which, like I said, I'm not as concerned about even now. I kind of just like the idea of being able to say that I mine Bitcoins and just to support the network. I mean, it's made me a decent amount of money. Again, more whenever the price was up, but $300 to kind of do my part to support the network. I do my part. I wanted to help. So,
yeah, we're set to get, I think tomorrow we should get the second half of our first Bitcoin. We set the payouts to be every half a Bitcoin we would get paid. Tomorrow we will have one full Bitcoin from the mining. And yeah, at current prices, that means we about broke even so far. One of the things that I like the most is that, you know, with the Bitcoin price going up and everything, you always wish that, you know, I wish I bought more. I wish I invested more at the beginning. Well, when you're mining, you know, you're able to get that, you know, it might not be a ton, but you're able to get that regular payment. You're able to get more Bitcoins regularly. And that's pretty cool because, you know, I just find myself constantly wishing I had more Bitcoins. Well, now I can get them somewhat regularly, and, you know, it's not a ton, but, you know, we're hoping always. We're always hoping over time they'll be worth more, and, you know, that's pretty cool.
I definitely wouldn't have one, or maybe I would have then, but I'm very glad that we didn't do the Bitcoin thing for ordering that.
Oh yeah, that would have been a mistake. And obviously, I'm obviously glad that you convinced me to put more money into it, because a jalapeno would be making a whole lot less right now.
Yeah, I've been reading too much of entrepreneurial stuff, which I'm finding I have talent for. But I was like, oh, we gotta. I mean, it wasn't a ton of money, especially because I was going to be getting my tax money back, which was a decent amount. I was like, yeah, I'll put, because we split the cost, so it was like, I'll put $300. I think I even said that I'd pay a little bit more, just because you said before about you weren't sure if you wanted to spend all the money. And I was like, well, I mean, I have a bunch of money that I can kind of just, I'm going to get more than that back on the taxes. So I was like, okay, I mean, this is like a chance for us to put like a decent amount of money. Like it kind of felt like this was legitimate, or this was legit. We were actually doing something that could actually make us money. It wasn't like stupid little kids' schemes to get rich. It felt kind of cool just to do something like that.
Yeah, that's true. It felt pretty significant, and ultimately it's working out, I think. So that's pretty cool. Thanks for listening. Once again, this is You, Me, and BTC. Visit our website, youmeandbtc.com, and join us next time.